There was definitely doubt and fear for sure, and there's always going to be. I don't believe anyone who says they have no fear about literally packing their bags off and moving as far away as possible. We always discussed that we wanted to go and live abroad somewhere, and then I don't think we immediately jumped on Australia, if I'm honest. But the way everything planned out, the way that she got offered to move to Australia, I happened to be doing my sports marketing at the time. So to have an opportunity to move to Melbourne, like one of the sporting capitals of the world, it all kind of just was a sign to be like, if it's ever going to happen, this is it.
G'day guys, on the show today we are talking about how to move to Australia and land a dream job in sport. And the man we've got to help us is none other than SportsGrad member George Ludlow from London. George is currently 2 weeks into his brand new job in Melbourne, working as an account manager at Gemba, which is a leading sports marketing agency. George has transformed his life from leaving behind a career in property, which he wasn't passionate about, to now working on some of the most lucrative partnerships in Australian sport, including Toyota's sponsorship of the AFL, which is Australia's biggest sport. But to arrive at what he describes as his dream job, George started his quest for a role in sport in Australia almost 8 months ago. And in that time, he's been extremely proactive in his approach. So, today, we dive into exactly how he made the move overseas, what he did to stand out, and how he felt taking such a big risk, and his best tips on how you can take your career around the world. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered 2.
Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad Podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. Brought to you by Deakin University, home to the world's #1 sports science school. I'm Ruben Williams, and the great Ryan Walker is on leave today and next week as well, so you're stuck with me for the time being. But if you are new to the podcast, each week we learn how people made it in the sports industry. We tease out their career decisions, their work habits, their skills, and everything they do that makes them great. And this is so that you can learn how to get in, get promoted, and start thriving in the sports industry. Now, today's podcast is an epic one, and it's based on one question that keeps popping up in my LinkedIn inbox time and time again, and it's around, Ruben, how do I take my career around the world? And specifically, how do I move to Australia and land a job in sport? So today, we've got none other than SportsGrad member George Ludlow in to explain how he did it as someone who is fresh into this experience. But before we jump in, if you're not already, make sure you're following us on LinkedIn. We're pumping out heaps of content out there. So if you want some regular doses of inspiration and lessons on how to grow your career in sport, LinkedIn is where you can get a lot of that. But if you want to connect with us and hundreds of others working in the sports industry, be sure to become a SportsGrad Community member. You can either join as a rookie member if you're looking to break into the sports industry, or you can join as a pro member if you're already working and you want to connect with other like-minded professionals. Now, speaking of the SportsGrad community, it's time for our weekly shout out. And there are a lot of wins to go through today, a lot of particularly exciting wins. And the first one goes to James Roche, who has just got a job with Stan Sport, who are doing the programming for the Olympics. And he has only been a member for 2 weeks. And he sent this to us. He said, after absorbing as much content as I could and following all the guides to succeed in the application/interview process, I was finally able to land a new role after over a year of searching. So well done to you, James. I think that is a brand new record. According to our website, Path Suri has the record with 29 days between joining and landing a job in sport, and 14 days is half that time. So well done to you, James. I think we've got to pass the medal over for quickest member to get a job after joining. Next up, we got Madison Dunford, who has just got a job as a support experience officer at the Melbourne Football Club. Well done to you, Madison. And Jasmine Robb, also at the Melbourne Football Club as a retail assistant. The Melbourne Football Club are great partners of ours and very happily provide a lot of job opportunities to our members as well. So it's great to see those being taken up. And our final win goes to Jake Stewart up in Sydney, who messaged me a while back saying, Ruben, I'm about 30 episodes from listening to every single podcast. Well, his recent win in our community is he has listened to all 287 episodes of the podcast, which is absolutely outstanding. So well done to you, Jake. I hope you have learned plenty about the sports industry in that time. Now, as always, in our community, we've got plenty of events coming up. So if you want to connect with others, grow your network and learn from like-minded people, be sure to mark these in your calendar. Coming up, we have speed networking for our pro community on the 18th of June and for our rookies on the 24th of June. Perfect opportunity to get some reps in the bank. If you are new to networking or feel like you lack some social skills, come and jump online with us and have a casual conversation. Then we have a masterclass with Sheila McGoy from Cricket Australia, one of my friends from back in the day at Cricket Australia. She is an absolute master at this. She's going to be doing a masterclass on budgeting 101. This has been a skill that's been requested time and time again, one that, unless you actually get thrown into doing it, you don't really get taught. So we're going to teach our pros how to do that. So the 26th of June, that is coming up. And we'll also be locking in some very exciting events around social media and how to be a better presenter and some Olympic-themed stuff as well. So stay tuned. If you're in the community, keep your eye on the events calendar because there is plenty coming up in the works. But also, if you're not a member and you're thinking about becoming a member, you might have seen that last week we had a information night all about the community and what's involved. And, we give you the chance to ask your questions so you can figure out, is it the right thing for you? Now, if you miss this, don't worry because we're going to have one more before we open the community up again in August. And the next one is going to be on the 15th of July. So roughly a month away. So mark that in your calendar. If you want to come and chat with us and find out more about the SportsGrad community, be sure to get along to that. Now, there's always plenty going on in SportsGrad land. So if you would enjoy a quick email from us every Friday that includes all the latest job openings, networking events, Q&As with industry professionals, and the latest podcast episodes, then make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. To grab that, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe. There's also a link in the show notes to join. Alrighty, without further ado, here is George Ludlow.
Are you aiming for a future in sport? Be ready to transform the industry. Study with Deakin and be prepared to redefine what it means to work in sport. Deakin's School of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences is ranked #1 in the world. So if you want to turn your passion for sport into an impactful career, get ready to push the limits of exercise and sports science, sport coaching, sport development, sports management, nutrition sciences, physical education, and more. Apply now to study at Deakin in 2024.
George Ludlow, welcome to the SportsGrad Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
George, it wasn't too long ago that we were catching up for a beer at the Nellie Dean pub over in Soho in London. I think that was October last year. We were chatting about your upcoming move to Australia, and now we're seeing you at coffee clubs in Richmond and at conferences running the show. Looks like you've made the move quite successfully.
Yeah, it's gone as well as it could have, I think. We hear about all these kind of nightmare stories of how hard it can be to move over, but we've definitely hit the ground running, and we're kind of waiting for that, what's the catch kind of thing. But now, really, really happy to be here and settling in well.
Wonderful. And the question that people always want to know when someone moves to Melbourne specifically is, have you got an AFL team?
I didn't until I got here, and I live in Collingwood. So we've gone for Collingwood, and it's only since living here that I'm being called a Glory supporter without knowing that they're the current champions. So
Nice. Yeah, kind of like jumping on Manchester United in the early 2000s, but we won't hold that against you. It's a good time to go for the Pies at the moment. And I'm actually glad that people who come to Melbourne get the full AFL experience. So for you to be a Collingwood fan and experience MCG with 90,000 every week, I think is awesome. So well done to you. George, as you know, as a listener of the show, we start every episode with our quickfire questions so that people can get to know a bit more about you before we dive into your journey and how you've made the jump from London to Australia. So first quickfire question for you is, what was your first ever job?
Removal man.
Removal man. Nice.
Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
So I did it for summer, and then sort of outside of school as well, like some evenings and weekends as well. So it became like a pretty much kind of like a 1.5 year, 2 year thing on and off.
Nice. And what did you study at university?
So I did an undergrad in property, and then more recently I've just completed a sports marketing master's.
Wonderful. And what is your favourite sporting moment?
It's probably got to be Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw's opening goal in the Euro 2020 final.
Nice. That was a great moment. I just watched a documentary the other day about I think it's called like Attack on Wembley, where they really detailed the fans that tried to break in and watch the game that day. And yeah, and the main character of that documentary is actually the Wembley Stadium director, who I've seen pop up on LinkedIn from time to time. So it was an eventful day, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure.
And we usually ask this people hiring, but you've just been hired. So what is your favorite interview question to ask of the interviewer?
So it's normally based around their sort of culture and how they help people fit into the company. I'm always of the view that you do your own research into the company, and then you want to work there because of the work they do. So you kind of cover up that aspect. So I always want to go into sort of greater detail about what am I personally going to get out of this from, sort of a career development and sort of social point of view as well.
Nice. I think a lot of people forget that it's equally important to make sure that a job is a good fit for you. Not only are you a good fit for the job, so having those questions prepared definitely helps you check that off. Do you have one book or podcast you'd recommend that has helped you at work?
Yeah, I do. I always forget the name of it. The Unofficial Partner podcast. So it's basically just all thing sports business. I got recommended it halfway through my master's. And it became incredibly useful because it was basically giving me real-time examples of what was happening in the sporting world. And then even for prepping for interviews coming out here, gives you that bit of knowledge to talk about something currently happening in the industry.
Nice. Danny Bowron, who's a senior marketing manager, is actually the reason why Deakin University sponsored this podcast. He actually worked at Gemba as well back in the day and used to work for Octagon over in London. But yeah, he's worked in sports marketing for 20 plus years. And he also recommended Unofficial Partner as a go-to resource too back in, I reckon he was episode 239 for those people who want to dive further into the world of sports marketing. So a great resource, no doubt. What is one platform that you use in your job? You've only been on the job for 2 weeks. Is there one thing that you're using every day that you couldn't live without?
Well, the easy answer is Teams, especially with everyone working from home and in the office and around different cities and around the world. So that's handy, but also PowerPoint as well. A lot of decks and client presentations. So it's good to know the ins and outs of PowerPoint for sure.
Nice. And if you had 30 minutes to pick anyone's brain, who would it be?
David Attenborough. So I'm a bit of a wildlife geek, and it always blows my mind that we know more about space than what's in our own oceans on this planet. So I just think talking to him about everything wildlife would be a pretty unreal moment.
Nice. I thought you might say your managing director, Andrew Condon, just to see if you can get insight into how to work with Gemba and those, because we have got Condo coming up on the podcast in a few weeks' time. But David Attenborough is a very curious one.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you got any questions for Condo, we'll chat after this and you can shoot them through.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, mate. Well, let's dive into a bit of the journey that you've been on, because it is an outstanding one. It is an incredibly difficult one to move to the other side of the world to work in sport in an industry that is heavily reliant on networks and relationships. And when you're moving to a new country and you don't have those established relationships, on top of the visa issues as well, it can be incredibly hard. But you have made that jump not only into the Australian sports industry, but at one of the best sports marketing agencies going around in Gemba. So do you want to tell us a bit about, to start with, what is your role and what have you been hired to do at Gemba?
Sure. So I'm an account manager at Gemba. So sort of a quick overview of the company is it's basically split into 3 different divisions, if you like. So there's the insights division, which is your market research, strategy, which is sort of business and marketing strategy. And then there's the communications, which is where the account management team sits. And we essentially just sort of bring that insight and strategy to life for the brand. So basically sort of a quick overview is we'll sort of meet with the client, understand what they want to get out of this campaign, and their relationship with the rights holder, what their target audience wants to be, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. We go away, we create the brief. We work very closely with our creative team who create the assets for us to then put into the campaign, get the final green light from the brand. And then basically we just manage the campaign from start to finish. And then once it's done, sort of do a review reports. And yeah, that's basically a quick little synopsis of how it goes, basically.
Amazing. And are you able to tell us some of the names of the brands that you've been assigned to work on?
Yeah, so I'm on the Toyota account at the moment. So Toyota's arguably sort of the biggest brand player in sport, especially in Australia. So heavily focused on the AFL, the Olympics, of course, which is just coming up, and Cricket Australia.
I was going to say the Toyota AFL sponsorship, I'm pretty sure, as you mentioned, is the largest sponsorship in Australian sport. So to be thrown straight onto it is amazing.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on there for sure.
Yep. Nice. Well, you mentioned to me you're only 2 weeks in. I'm sure that'll be a fun road ahead, particularly as we enter the back half of the AFL season. Hopefully there's some fun opportunities coming up for you there. But tell us a bit about how you got to this point, particularly, let's say, maybe not quite as far back as your removalist days, but say coming out of uni to the point where you thought, I want to take my career in sport to Australia. How did that period transpire for you?
Yeah, so going into my undergrad, I was always torn between doing sport and property, and then end up going down the property route. And then I did about 3 years in the industry in property, and there was just always this constant urge to sort of get into sport at some point. And I think I just hit the wall with property, kind of didn't see myself going anywhere with it, and couldn't see myself enjoying the work I was doing for the rest of my life, basically. And I basically just spend all my free time playing, watching and talking about sport. So I was like, this is going to be a good time to try and make the move, basically. And I say that like it's very easy, but it definitely isn't. So it's 2022 it started, and it's quite a funny full circle moment. The very, very first person I spoke to about moving into the sports industry was a friend of mine, and his friend worked in Turnstile, which is within the same group as Gemba. And he had just moved out to the Sydney office, funny enough. So I got on a call with him, just sort of get an idea of, what he does, how did he get into sport, that sort of stuff. And then he passed me on to somebody in the London office and got his point of view of things as well. And then I mentioned to them both, I've actually just found a sports marketing course at Loughborough University, and they were pretty influential in being like, you should definitely go for it. It'll give you a really good grounding in sport, give you a good background knowledge. And I was lucky enough to have that real time work experience in the property industry. So they were very much like, you've got the core skills to transition into a role. You now just need that sort of sporting element on the CV. So did the masters, and really happy I did that, because the exposure I got in that full year was incredible. I did work with Gallagher Premiership Rugby, Formula E, and rights holders like that. So it was really, really good background. And then that came to an end in February 2024. But I should say in my time at uni, we had a guest lecture from Australia come over, who used to do some marketing in the sporting world. So I happened to speak to him after one of my lectures, and he provided me with some contacts out in Melbourne. And I immediately got organised calls with them, even though I was 6 months from coming away. I was there like, it's better to just sort of get my name in front of them, to be like, hi, thinking of coming out to Melbourne, would be great to talk to you, hear what's going on, hear what you guys have got. And then, of course, I don't think they took me too seriously at the time, because if you've got somebody from the UK saying, I'm coming out to Australia in 6 months, they kind of like prove it. So it was very much just to sort of say, hi, this is what I want to be doing. Can you give me any sort of like suggestions, start looking into stuff like that? So eventually finished a master's. And then as soon as I landed in Australia, I think in the first week, I met 8 people, all prior to who I'd priorly sort of organised coffee with from the UK, saying, right, it's happening, I'm coming out, which was really good, was it made me feel settled straight away. And from there, they all passed me on to different people within the industry. And then one of those people happened to be somebody who works at Gemba. So I met a Gemba contact straight off the bat in Melbourne, and just said, look, I'll keep an eye out, but if you know of anything coming up, please let me know. And then 3 months down the road, an account manager role popped up on LinkedIn. And as I was emailing him, he actually texted me to say, just found out about this role at Gemba. Are you interested? And I was like, well, funny enough, I'm currently half through an email. We're sending you my CV saying, any chance you can help me out? And then went through a process, and here we are.
Amazing. That's awesome, mate. A couple of follow-ups for you. Going way back when you had to make that decision about whether you go into property or sport, What was it that led you to go into property? Because I've been through a similar sort of crossroads when I was coming out of high school where, again, I was a sports mad person, just wanted to study sport. But then at the last minute, I thought, it seems a bit competitive. I'm not sure if I can get a job in it. I might follow something safe and go into marketing. So I took up a marketing degree and ended up dropping out of that within a year and a half. So I'm interested to hear, like, what were your reasons for also pushing sport to the side and going towards property?
Yeah, it was so my family's always been in property, so that was a big pull. And also 4 or 5 of my best mates also did property at uni as well. So I feel like it was very much kind of not like the easy thing to do, but I feel like a lot of influence around you because everyone's doing it. So you sort of have something in common, if that makes sense. Do I regret it? Probably not, if I'm honest. I think I'm a bit annoyed that it's taken me this long to get into sport for sure. But I definitely don't regret doing property and sort of getting the sort of business skill set that I got from my 3 years working in property as well. So
nice. And when you were thinking about making the jump into sport, and specifically sport in Australia, what were your first thoughts and feelings around that? Was it something that you were like immediately set on, or was there any doubt and fear associated to moving across the world?
There was definitely doubt and fear for sure, and there's always going to be. I don't believe anyone who says they have no fear about literally packing their bags off and moving as far away as possible. So I moved out here with my girlfriend, and she managed to move with her work. So that was a sort of a big factor for us because it meant at least one of us was settled. So that's how we always discussed that we wanted to go and live abroad somewhere. And then I don't think we immediately jumped on Australia, if I'm honest. But the way everything planned out, the way that she got offered to move to Australia, I happened to be doing my sports marketing at the time. So to have an opportunity to move to Melbourne, like one of the sporting capitals of the world, it all kind of just was a sign to be like, if it's ever going to happen, this is it.
Nice. And during that journey that you described in terms of moving overseas and looking to make contacts in Australia, at what point did you come across SportsGrad and when did you join the community?
So I'm pretty sure it was around October 2023, maybe a bit before actually, and spotted it on LinkedIn a couple of times and sort of was reading around it a bit. And then one of the contacts that I'd made through the guest lecturer who came out, he said, there's a good community called SportsGrad. And I was like, I've seen them sort of popping up on my LinkedIn. So when I got the advice from him and sort of read into it a bit more and got an idea of what it offered and what the community was like, decided to take the leap and become a member. And it's definitely one of the key factors in helping me settle into Melbourne and get a job. So,
and what did you find was the main thing that you got out of the community?
I think the togetherness was a key one. Was I feel like everyone as an individual, you kind of feel like, oh God, I'm the only one not getting picked. I'm the one struggling to find a job. And then as soon as I joined the Discord, it was everyone was like me, in the same boat. And it was just nice sort of like talk to people, like-minded people who love sport, who are also struggling to find a way in the sports industry. And like just the general different pages you have on the Discord, there's just so much going on. And it's just a really nice way to sort of almost kind of feel like you're settled without being there physically, if that makes sense. So that was really, really key for me. And it meant when I did eventually come to Melbourne, like go to the first coffee morning, for example, I didn't have any nerves because I kind of felt like I'd sort of settled within the group already.
Yep. Yeah, that was probably one of the unintentional things that we've somehow cultivated. It was like this energy of like proactiveness and connectivity of people paying it forward and helping each other, which like is a beautiful thing that's kind of evolved out of it. But, originally it was just like, hey, here's a place to chat. Here's some events to get everyone together. But then, the groundswell of momentum is what really kind of keeps people going. So who are some people that you've met through the community? I know one opportunity came up for you at Sport NXT, I believe. Are there any other connections you made through the community?
So the Sport NXT one was Jeffrey Long, who's sponsorship manager at MKTG. And he was literally the first person I spoke to in person at a coffee morning, which was quite funny. And I was like, you literally have like one of the dream jobs I would love to have in sport. So that was good. And then I got another contact as well, a guy called Sam Bell. So he was actually a friend of mine from back home, and I didn't realize they knew each other. So met him through SportsGrad, and we put 2 and 2 together, which was quite funny as well. And then just and then more and more people are coming to these coffee mornings every Friday in Richmond. So getting, the number keeps on rising and rising in terms of new people I'm meeting, which is really good.
Yep. And why did you decide to join in October last year? Because I believe you didn't make the move over until, was it about January or February this year? So
February, yeah.
So what was the reason for joining 4 months earlier?
I think it was just getting an idea of what was going on out there, to be honest, because SportsGrad's got a job board as well. So you're constantly getting notified of what sort of roles are coming up or are currently available. And also back to that community point as well, just sort of start building relationships. So that as soon as I got out here, I could sort of find my feet pretty much straight off the bat and feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah, networking is one of those things where like the benefits are amazing, but it does take probably, a few months for the benefits to start actualizing themselves, because like you meet someone and create a new connection, but it's not always that immediately an opportunity with that person is going to arise. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 months, but if you keep building your network consistently, then you get this like delayed effect where down the track in the future, all these opportunities start to present itself. And so it's awesome to see that someone like yourself has been proactive with this, create these connections. And then as soon as you arrive, something with Sport NXT pops up, or you can get a coffee with someone from Gemba, and then, you're getting your name recommended forward. So you are really to be applauded for starting your efforts well in advance.
Yeah, no, it's I'm definitely glad I did as well. I won't lie, I'm one of those people that kind of puts the whole LinkedIn messaging and reaching out to people to the side. Like it's kind of like my worst nightmare in a way. But when I started doing it and sort of found the flow with it and sort of like understood what they wanted to hear from me, what sort of like caught their eye, it definitely helped me out where I am today.
Amazing. Keen to dive into the interview process at Gemba. How did you find that? And was there any particular questions you can remember that you either found interesting or tripped you up? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was really good. The nice thing is it wasn't like technical, if that makes sense. They weren't asking me like sort of knowledgeable questions. It was very much, as I say, come from property, haven't got a sporting background. So it was almost like they were completely aware of that and they sort of appreciated that, which was nice for me because it made me sort of settle into the whole interview process. I didn't feel like I was having to really sell myself. So they very much just focus on like, right, we know you have a skill set. Just sort of like give us some evidence and examples of when you've used this. So that was good. And that was the same for stage 2 as well. And then the third stage, it was presenting a case study to them. They sort of give you a brief and just sort of see how well you can put it together and how you present. And which is really interesting as well. I really enjoyed that. It's very rare that you go through the interview process and you come out of it going, oh, I actually quite enjoyed the work I had to do for that. So yeah, no complaints from the interview process at all. There's always the question of name a weakness, which I always throws me because no one likes to say they have a weakness. But I always say I'm very obliging, which I am, because I'm always, especially when you go into a new role, you want to say yes to everything and try and do as much work as possible and understand how everything works. So yeah, that was probably the sort of the trickiest question I came across.
Yep. For anyone else who's preparing to answer an interview question and might think that they're going to get asked this one thing you can do to answer what your weaknesses is call out something that you're working on, but then also add to it some information about how you are working on it so that people can see that you are self-aware and proactive at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And tell me about the task that they made you do. Are you able to share some details around what assignment you were given?
Yeah, so it was an old piece of work they had. It was a brand and their relationship with Tennis Australia. And again, sort of as it's pretty much how I summed up my role. I basically had to go through the steps that I would take in terms of getting the information from the client, creating a brief, getting in touch with the creative team, and then sort of creating this whole big campaign from start to finish and how you manage it, budget it, that sort of thing.
Nice. And what's the first couple of weeks at Gemba looked like for you? Any thoughts on the team or the organisation or some of the clients you're working on? What has that experience walking into a new job been like?
It's been incredibly overwhelming because not only is it a new job, but it's a new job in sport and at a role that, I couldn't have picked a better role if I'm honest to start my sporting career. So it's definitely overwhelming, but the team's incredible. It's, at the end of the day, you're in an office full of like-minded people, sort of sport mad people. And I think the nice thing about it is because everyone's sports fans, they generally do want to make the industry a better place. I feel like other industries, there's only one reason you're in it, and it's trying, to succeed as much as possible. Whereas the vibe at Gemba is definitely, we want to make this industry even more better for the fans and to grow the industry in different markets. So that's really refreshing to work in a team that actually really, really cares about the work we do.
I love that, mate. How does you mentioned your feelings before moving to Australia and even thinking about the prospect of moving across the world. How does that compare to the feelings of what you're feeling right now, 2 weeks into a job?
Like nowhere near. All those fears have disappeared. Like I completely forgot I had them, if I'm honest. I think the word is relief, if I'm honest, because we've made the decision to fly across the world, had to find somewhere to live, just set up all your personal life stuff. Just small things like bank account, phone. It's just stuff like that, which it just keeps you busy on your toes. And then settled in slightly, and then when the news of the job came through, it's almost kind of like, wow, I can really start to enjoy my time in Melbourne and Australia now. Sort of no stress, no waking up of like, another day on LinkedIn, another day of trying who's around for a coffee, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think the word is relief for sure.
Love it, mate. And what are you enjoying most about Melbourne?
God, that's a great question. There's so much. I think it's either how much there is to offer, not only in the city but surrounding it as well. There's so much in close proximity to the city, so it makes weekends amazing. And in the city itself, like the food scene's unbelievable. The bars are really cool as well. I'm in love with all of it at the moment, and there's just so much to do. I've got a notes page which just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger of different bars, restaurants, museums, gardens, walks to do. So yeah, no, and enjoying every second of it so far.
Unreal, mate. Well, we're very happy for you. And, you can just tell by the sound in your voice how relieved and happy you are to be in the position you are. And as I mentioned at the start of the episode, it is an incredible thing that you've done. It's not easy to move across the world not knowing anybody before you arrive and to land a job in a competitive industry. So if you haven't patted yourself on the back, you should be doing that every day, because it is awesome what you're living out. On the podcast last year, we had a guy called Tom Hickey come on, and he's now working for Brisbane 2032 as a commercial development director up there. But prior to landing that particular dream job, he was working at the International Olympic Committee, and before that he was working at the NFL in New York. And we asked him about his journey around the world and what were some of the things that helped him along the way. And he did mention that it was a lot easier for him to find work once he got on the ground. Did you find that was similar in your case, or did any opportunities come up while you were overseas, or was it once you were here, then the doors really swung open?
Yeah, definitely on the ground. So I mentioned that when I was during my master's, I started reaching out to some people who their contacts got passed to me. And, as I said, sort of like, an English guy say he's coming to Australia. Yeah, we'll believe when we see it, sort of thing. So it's 10 times easier once you're on the ground. Not to say that you shouldn't be making these connections already from wherever you're coming from. So as I mentioned as well, first week here, met 8 people. All those 8 people was because I'd already got in touch from back in the UK between sort of 3 to a week before I came, 3 months to a week before I came, basically. So it's definitely worth putting in the legwork, the groundwork there. Get your, phone call, Zoom call, just get your name in front of them so they know who you are. You then get here, meet them. They're like, right, you're here now. I can try and help you. They then pass you on to another contact. Before you know it, you've had, 20, 25 coffees within 3 months. And then all it takes is that one contact who you might have spoken to about 3 months ago and you think they've forgotten about you to get back in touch and say, hey, are you still looking for a job? And you're like, yeah. And then go from there.
Amazing. Sounds like networking is super important, but what else can people be doing before they arrive to decrease the time spent job hunting in a new country?
Doing your research for sure. So if you've, like me, I knew that I wanted to work in an agency environment. So, and the sporting world is so vast that, like, when I started to first properly sort of do some research into the industry, I couldn't believe how many sort of different lines of work there were within sport. So I definitely pinpointed agency to start with. And then doing the masters and finishing that, it definitely made me realize, like, yeah, the agency world has like a nice combo of like the skill set I've already developed through working and just my general interest in what I would like to do in sport. So I think doing the legwork in terms of researching what different types of work there are in the sporting industry and what sort of companies there are within that line of work is definitely beneficial.
Did that research also help you have a targeted approach with the people that you were reaching out to, which perhaps might have led to more meaningful conversations when you were here?
Yeah, 100%. So I basically did all my LinkedIn hunting, just going through all sports agencies out here, essentially. And as a backup, I made like sort of a backup list. So when I eventually did get through all the contacts I wanted to try and get in touch with. And then when nothing was happening at the time, I had sort of like a backup list of like, right, who are the names who do sponsorship management and partnership management within clubs, for example. So I almost had like sort of a tier of how I wanted to attack it. So I had my agencies, and I had sort of clubs and people within the roles I wanted in the clubs, and from there, basically.
Amazing. Mate, this has been incredible for people who are looking to do the same thing as you. Is there any final advice you would give to someone who's thinking about making the move but is nervous to pull the trigger?
I know it's very cliche, but just do it. It's one of those things where you hum and ah about it, and then you might get 10 years down the line and you might look back on it saying, oh, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I try something new? I was always of the view of, if it doesn't work out, I go back home. What's the worst that can happen, basically? And, I'm currently sat here 2 weeks into a pretty dream job in a city as far away as possible from London. so yeah, like, just take the bull by the horns and don't be afraid, and just dive headfirst in, and something will happen for you for sure.
Love it, mate. For those people who are fearful of making the jump overseas or fearful of taking any sort of action, one tool that I would recommend to help you overcome your fear is an exercise that's championed by Tim Ferriss, which is called fear setting. It's kind of the opposite of goal setting. Instead of defining your goals, you define what you're scared of. And once you can clearly define what you're scared of, then you can work through it. So, for example, the exercise gets you to firstly define it. So you might write down, I'm worried about moving across the world and, running out of money. So then you can start to work through it. So the next question is, well, what can you do to prevent your fear from happening? It's like, all right, well, I could take up some casual jobs at a bar just to get some money in. And then you start to work through, what might you do if your fear actually happened? How would you repair it? So then you might think, oh, well, if I've truly ran out of money and I had to leave, then I'd go home. I'd call up my mum or dad and somehow borrow some money to get back home. And then it gets you to give it a score. So on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being life ending, how life ending and life altering is this going to be if your fear actually happens? Well, probably, if I ran out of money in the other side of the world, it's probably a 2 or 3 in the grand scheme of things, definitely considering all things going on in the world right now. But then it gets you to think about the other side as well. And there's, what might a partial attempt, so if you were to give this thing a 50% effort, not your best effort, just a half effort, what might the life-changing upside be, and how could you score that? And, in your case, it might be, well, even if I just gave it a half attempt to apply for jobs and networking, I might land a job in sport. And that could be, anywhere between a 7 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, depending on what job you land. So for logical people who like to make sure that they are making a smart decision, what that process does is allows you to look on a piece of page to say, here's my contingency plan. If the worst happens, I'm looking at a 2 to 3 out of 10. But if the best happens, even if I don't give it everything, I'm looking at a 7 to 10. So am I prepared to go after a 7 out of 10 at the risk of a 2 out of 10? And hopefully that makes people make a comfortable decision to say, yes, let's go for it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was definitely in that boat coming over here for sure. Like, I had made myself a plan of, right, for the first 3 months, maybe 4 at max, just commit all your time to doing the job hunting and make sure that you were in a position that you could do that. And then as it was coming towards the end of the 3rd month, I was like, okay, we're at the point now where I'm going to have to sort of think about the other options whilst I'm out here, like get some part-time work, or will I just completely sort of work in a different industry and sort of keep doing some background, job hunting in the back. So yeah, you've definitely got to have that mindset in place to be there. Like, if it doesn't happen by this date, what's the next step, and how do we go from there?
100%. Awesome, mate. Well, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for jumping on. I'm sure plenty of people will get a lot out of this. And for people who want some detailed guidance on that exercise I mentioned, if you go to my LinkedIn account and look up my featured posts, there's a blog post in there that spells out the steps. But George, thank you very much for jumping on the pod and sharing your experience from jumping from London to Australia.
Thank you very much. Glad to share, and I hope some people sort of follow my steps and make the big move as well.
And for people who want some more information about moving a career around the world, or we also mentioned Danny Bowen at the top of this episode, working in sports marketing. You can find Danny in episode 239, I believe, and then Tom Hickey wasn't too long after, he was in 242, I believe. So for those who want more information in that space, check out those. Also, if you want to go the other way and move from Australia to London, definitely check out Chris Dobson, who was in episode 251, all about how to take your career to London. So check those out. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that chat with George. I hope it gave you plenty to think about and is getting you motivated to take your career anywhere around the world. George is a fantastic member, and we're super proud of people like him who dare to take their career around the world and are successful in doing so. Because as you can tell in his voice, it is just such a massive relief when you set yourself a goal and you go about to achieve it. So well done to you, George. It is now time for Ask SportsGrad, where every week we answer a question from our community. And so if you would like to ask us a question, first, become a SportsGrad member. Head to sportsgrad.com.au/community to put your name on the wait list. And then when we open up, you can jump in and join. But once you're inside, you'll see a channel called #AskSportsGrad, where you can fire off your questions and we'll answer them for you. Now, this one comes from Ben. And Ben says, any advice on how to tailor your resume and cover letter to certain jobs? I feel as though sending in the same one is getting quite repetitive, but changing it every time is also really time consuming. Ben, I feel you. I've been a job hunter. It took me 5 years through uni and doing internships and changing courses to finally break into a full-time job in sport. And in that time, I sent out plenty of resumes and cover letters, and I can understand how tedious and time-consuming it can be. However, it is a necessary evil, and that is because you got to put yourself in the shoes of an HR manager who's going to read your resume. For example, if you applied to 2 different jobs, let's say, for example, one is a game development role where you are out in the field, you're going out to communities to promote your sport and run clinics, and let's say another one is related to social media. If you think you can do both of those jobs, that's fantastic, but you need to tailor your resume to each one. And that is because every single job is looking for the best possible candidate. And when you're going for jobs in sport and you're up against a field of literally 500 to 600 people, sometimes a lot more, you have to show that you meet the criteria immediately. So in your cover letter and in your resume, you need to draw attention to the most specific parts that match that job. If you don't, your resume will literally get thrown to the side and forgotten. Way back in episode 110 of the podcast, we had Dan Simons on, who is an HR manager for the Victorian Institute of Sport. He's actually the director of people and culture. He's the head honcho there. And given the quantity of resumes that come across his desk, he literally said, you have got 5 seconds to catch my attention or it's gone. And the first thing that he looks at is the experience section. So what you need to do is make sure that your experience speaks to the job, because if you've got the wrong experience highlighted at the top of your resume, then your best experience, which might be, the 4th or 5th experience down, could literally get overlooked and cost you an opportunity. So yes, it might take you time and it might be tedious, but it is a necessary thing to do if you want to be noticed. And the same thing goes for your cover letter as well. So the way to tailor your cover letter is by writing 3 paragraphs using evidence from your experience to explain how you have done the top 3 skill characteristics of the job. So if you write the same cover letter that says, I love sport. I'm really good. Here's a bunch of different things I've done. And it's vague enough to be able to apply to 4 or 5 different jobs. Then if it's that vague, then you're just going to get pushed past and you're going to get overlooked for somebody who has got the very targeted experience, who really wants this job, and you can see has spent their whole life working towards this role, or at least that's what it says on their cover letter and in their resume, because they have tailored it towards the role. So to be frank with you, Ben, you're going to end up wasting more time job hunting if you do not tailor your resume. So if you feel like it's frustrating at the moment, it's going to be even more frustrating if you don't do it. That is my advice on how to tailor your resume and cover letter. Make sure you are stacking the experiences in order of relevance to the skills necessary to the job. Now, if you'd like to ask us a question or you'd like to ask our friends in question, as I mentioned before, become a SportsGrad member. Each week we jump online and chat with industry professionals, and you can join Q&As and pick their brain on anything that's coming to mind. And all of those are recorded. So when you join, you get immediate access to over 60 hours of exclusive content, which is basically like Netflix for the sports industry. So if you're having questions about what to do with your career, you're wondering how other people have broken in, you've literally got this bank of resources at your disposal to learn from. And the best thing about that as well is a lot of those people are very generous with their time. So if you go in, watch their webinar, and then message them on LinkedIn and say, hey, thanks for giving your time, I really loved what you said about this, then you might be able to meet them in person, and you never know where those connections will take you. So if you want to get involved, head to our website, sportsgrad.com.au/community. Find us on LinkedIn, and if you enjoyed the show, we'd really love it if you gave us a rating or subscribed or left us a review. Until then, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Hey friends, one last thing before you go. If you really want to make an impact in sport, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Inside, we share all the latest job openings and networking events, so you're always aware of opportunities to land a job and grow your network. Plus, we share a Q&A with a professional on how they grow their career in sport. Here we talk about things like how they moved overseas or negotiated their salary or landed a new job or promotion, made a career change, and so much more. It's kind of like a little boost of inspiration in your inbox before the weekend. So if you're like us, you're career driven and you're keen to progress quickly, you're going to love the SportsGrad newsletter. To get it, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe, or follow the link in the show notes. See you next time.